Noah Grayson pulled his truck to the shoulder when he saw the police cruiser with its hood up, smoke curling into the cold December air. He told Sophie to stay buckled and stepped out into the wind. The officer turned at the sound of his boots on gravel, and when she removed her sunglasses, the world stopped. Brooke Ellison, the woman who had walked out of his life 10 years ago without explanation, leaving wounds he thought he had buried. Now she stood in front of him while his 7-year-old daughter sat in the truck behind him, oblivious to the storm that had just begun. The woman standing beside the disabled cruiser looked older than the girl he remembered, her face sharper, her posture rigid in the winter light. But the eyes were the same. Dark brown, guarded, searching his face the way they used to when she was trying to decide whether to tell him the truth or a version of it. Brooke spoke first, her voice steady but low. She said his name like a question, like she wasn't sure he would answer. Noah nodded once, not trusting himself to say anything yet. Behind him, Sophie shifted in her booster seat, humming something off-key. The sound reminded him where he was, what he was doing, and how badly he wanted to get back in the truck and drive away. But he didn't. He walked toward the cruiser, his boots crunching on the gravel shoulder. Brooke stepped back, giving him space to look. Under the hood, steam rose from the radiator, and he could see the split hose before she said anything. It was a simple fix, the kind of thing that shouldn't have stranded anyone. But out here on Route 12, help didn't come quickly. She must have known that when she pulled over. Noah asked if she had called for a tow. Brooke said she had, but it would be at least an hour. She didn't ask him to stay. She didn't ask him anything. She just stood there with her arms crossed, watching him the way someone watches a stranger they're trying to place. It made him angry in a way he hadn't expected. The idea that she could look at him like that after everything. He told her he had a spare hose in the truck. It wasn't true, but he said it anyway because standing there doing nothing felt worse than lying. Brooke thanked him, her voice flat, professional. She wasn't wearing a wedding ring. He noticed that before he could stop himself and then hated that he had noticed at all. Sophie called out from the truck, asking if they could go home soon. Her voice carried across the cold air, bright and impatient. Brooke turned toward the sound and something shifted in her expression. Not sadness exactly, something closer to recognition or loss. She asked Noah if that was his daughter. He said yes and didn't offer anything else. Brooke nodded slowly, as if she had expected it, as if the last 10 years had already told her this story. Noah went back to the truck and lied to Sophie about the hose. He told her he needed to make a quick call, that they would be home soon. Sophie asked if the police officer was in trouble. Noah said, no, just car trouble. Sophie said that was okay then because police officers helped people, so it was good that they were helping her back. The logic was simple, the kind only a 7-year-old could manage without bitterness. He stood outside the truck longer than he needed to, pretending to look through the toolbox in the bed. The truth was, he didn't have a spare hose, and even if he did, he wasn't sure he could stand there long enough to install it. His hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from something older, something he thought he had buried under years of routine and discipline. Brooke appeared beside him without warning. She asked if he was all right. Noah told her he was fine, which was the easiest lie he had told all day. She didn't believe him. He could see it in the way she looked at him, the way her jaw tightened just slightly. She said she was sorry for the inconvenience, that she would wait for the tow truck, that he didn't need to stay. Noah told her he didn't have the hose. The words came out harder than he meant them to, almost like an accusation. Brooke's expression didn't change. She said that was fine, that she appreciated him stopping anyway. Then she asked if Sophie was his only child. The question felt like a test or maybe a trap. Noah said, yes, she was. Brooke nodded again, slower this time, and looked back toward the truck where Sophie's face was pressed against the window, watching them with open curiosity. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of manure and frozen earth from the fields beyond the road. Noah remembered that smell from every winter of his life. The way it clung to his clothes and his skin, no matter how many times he washed. He had hated it once back when he thought he might leave Oakage and follow Brooke to the city. But he had stayed, and the smell had become something else. A reminder that some things didn't change, even when everything else did. Brooke said she had moved back to Oakage 2 weeks ago. She said it casually, like it didn't matter, like it was just another fact. Noah felt the words land in his chest, heavy and cold. He asked why. Brooke said she had been reassigned, that the department needed someone with her experience. She didn't say how long she would be staying. Noah didn't ask. He told her the tow truck would come eventually, that she should stay in the cruiser to keep warm. Brooke thanked him again, and this time there was something else in her voice, something that sounded almost like regret. Noah didn't want to hear it. He turned back toward his truck, toward Sophie, toward the life he had built without Brooke Ellison in it. But before he reached the driver's door, the memory hit him, sharp and unbidden. The kind that doesn't ask permission. 12 years ago, the night before Brooke left for college, they had driven out to the lake at the edge of town. It was late August, the air still warm, but carrying the first hint of autumn. They sat on the hood of Noah's truck, their backs against the windshield, watching the stars come out one by one. Brooke had been quiet all evening, and Noah thought it was because she was nervous about leaving. He told her it would be fine, that they would make it work. The distance didn't mean anything when two people wanted the same things. Brooke had turned to look at him then, her face serious in the dim light. She said she believed him. She said she would come back every chance she got, that Oakage was still home, that he was still home. Noah had kissed her, tasting the cherry chapstick she always wore, feeling the softness of her hair against his hand. She had kissed him back hard and desperate, like she was trying to memorize him. Before they left the lake, Noah told her he would wait. It didn't matter how long it took, he would be there when she came back. Brooke promised she would come back. She promised a lot of things that night. And Noah had believed every one of them. Because he didn't know any better. Noah blinked, and the memory dissolved. He was standing beside his truck again, his hand on the door handle, his daughter humming behind the glass. Brooke was still by the cruiser, her arms crossed against the cold, watching him with an expression he couldn't read. He climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine without looking back. Sophie asked if the police officer was going to be okay. Noah said yes. Someone was coming to help her. Sophie asked if they would see her again. Noah said he didn't know, which was another lie. Oakage was small and Brooke was a cop. Of course, they would see her again. The question wasn't if, but how many times and how long he could keep pretending it didn't matter. He pulled back onto the road and drove toward the farm, the fields stretching out on either side, bare and brown under the gray sky. Sophie chattered about school, about her friend Emma's new puppy, about the art project she wanted to finish before dinner. Noah listened without hearing, his mind still caught on the image of Brooke standing beside her cruiser, looking at him like she had something to say, but didn't know how to start. By the time they reached the farm, the sun was low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the barn and the pasture where the cows stood in their slow, patient clusters. Noah parked near the house and helped Sophie out of the truck. She ran ahead, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, calling for Margaret, who was probably in the kitchen starting dinner. Noah stood in the driveway for a moment, breathing in the cold air, trying to clear his head. The farm was the only thing that had ever made sense to him. The work was hard but predictable, the rhythms of it steady and unbreakable. He had built a life here, a good life, one that didn't require him to think too much about what he had lost or why. But now Brooke was back, and the careful structure he had built felt suddenly fragile, like a house with a cracked foundation. He told himself it didn't matter, that she was just another person in town, that he could ignore her the way he ignored everyone else who tried to get too close. But even as he thought it, he knew it wasn't true. Brooke Ellison had never been just another person, and 10 years hadn't changed that. Inside the house, Sophie was already telling Margaret about the police officer with the broken car. Margaret listened patiently, nodding in all the right places, but her eyes found nose over Sophie's head. She didn't ask any questions, but he could see them. There, waiting. Margaret had raised him after his parents died when he was 8. And she knew him better than anyone. She would know something was wrong before he said a word. Noah hung his coat by the door and went upstairs to change. His room was the same as it had always been, plain and functional, with a bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the south pasture. He sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Brooke was back. That was the only fact that mattered, and it was the one fact he didn't know what to do with. Downstairs, he could hear Sophie laughing. The sound light and easy. She didn't know what Brooke meant. Didn't know the history that stretched between them like a scar. To Sophie, Brooke was just a police officer who needed help. And maybe that was all she needed to be. Maybe Noah could keep it that way. Keep the past where it belonged, buried under years of silence and distance. But as he stood and walked back downstairs, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. That the careful balance he had maintained for so long was about to tip. Brooke wasn't just passing through. She was staying. And that changed everything. Noah saw Brooke again 3 days later at the farmer's market. On Saturday morning, he had taken Sophie into town to pick up feed and let her choose something from the baked goods table, the way they did every weekend. It was routine, predictable, the kind of morning that required nothing from him except showing up. But when he turned the corner past the vegetable stands, Brooke was there, standing near the honey vendor, holding a small jar up to the light. She saw him at the same moment he saw her. For a second, neither of them moved. Then Sophie tugged on his hand, asking if they could get cinnamon rolls. And the moment broke. Brooke set the jar down and walked toward them, her stride steady and deliberate. The way cops walked when they were on duty, even if they weren't wearing the uniform. She was in jeans and a dark jacket. Nothing official, but Noah could still see the badge clipped to her belt. Brooke said hello to Sophie first, crouching down to her level and asking her name. Sophie answered without hesitation, the way she did with everyone, open and trusting in a way that sometimes scared Noah. She told Brooke about the cinnamon rolls and how her dad always let her pick 2 if she promised to share one with Margaret. Brooke smiled, the kind of smile that looked almost real, and said that sounded like a good deal. Noah stayed quiet, watching the exchange with something tight in his chest. Brooke stood and looked at him, her expression careful, neutral. She said it was good to see him again. Noah said nothing. He told Sophie they needed to keep moving, that Margaret was waiting for them at home. Sophie waved goodbye to Brooke, who waved back, and then they were walking away, back toward the truck, back toward the safety of distance. But distance didn't last. The following Tuesday, Brooke showed up at the farm. She pulled into the driveway in her cruiser just after noon when Noah was fixing a section of fence near the barn. He saw the car and felt his stomach drop, the same sinking feeling he had felt on the road 3 days before. He wiped his hands on his jeans and walked toward her, forcing his expression into something flat and unreadable. Brooke stepped out of the cruiser and explained before he could ask. There had been reports of livestock theft in the area, she said. 3 farms. In the past 2 weeks, all within a 10-mile radius. The department was doing check-ins, making sure everyone knew to lock their barns and keep an eye out for anything unusual. She said it like it was routine, like she hadn't chosen to come here herself. Noah listened without interrupting. When she finished, he told her he would keep the barn locked. Brooke nodded and thanked him, but she didn't leave. She looked past him toward the pasture where the cows were clustered near the water trough and said the place looked good. That he had done well with it. Noah didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Brooke turned back toward her cruiser, but before she opened the door, she asked if he ever thought about leaving. The question caught him off guard. He asked what she meant. Brooke said she meant the farm, Oakage, all of it, whether he had ever wanted to go somewhere else. Noah told her no, he hadn't. This was where he belonged. Brooke looked at him for a long moment. And then she said she was glad one of them had figured that out. She got in the cruiser and drove away, leaving Noah standing in the driveway with a wrench in his hand and no idea what she had really been asking. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Margaret asked him about the visit. She said she had seen the cruiser from the kitchen window and wanted to know if everything was all right. Noah told her it was just a routine check. Nothing to worry about. Margaret didn't look convinced. She set a cup of tea in front of him and sat down across the table. Her hands folded in front of her. Margaret said she knew who Brooke was. She had known the moment Sophie mentioned the police officer with the broken car. Noah didn't ask how she knew. Margaret had lived in Oakage her entire life, and she remembered everything, especially the things people tried to forget. She said Brooke's return must be hard for him. Noah said it wasn't, that it didn't matter, that it had been 10 years and people moved on. Margaret didn't argue, she just looked at him with the quiet patience she had always had, the kind that made lying impossible. She asked him if he was protecting Sophie or protecting himself. Noah didn't answer. He finished his tea and went upstairs, but the question followed him, settling into the silence of his room like something he couldn't shake. The next time he saw Brooke, Sophie was with him. They were at the hardware store picking up supplies for the irrigation system Noah had been meaning to fix for weeks. Sophie was in the paint aisle, fascinated by the color samples when Brooke walked in. She was in uniform this time, her radio clipped to her shoulder, her expression serious until she saw them. Brooke walked over and said hello to Sophie, who lit up immediately. She asked Brooke if she had fixed her car, and Brooke said yes, that it was working perfectly now. Sophie said that was good because police officers needed cars that worked so they could help people. Brooke agreed and then she did something Noah didn't expect. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small plastic badge, the kind they gave to kids at community events. She handed it to Sophie and told her it was an honorary deputy badge just for her. Sophie's face went bright with excitement. She thanked Brooke 3 times in a row, holding the badge like it was made of gold. Noah watched the exchange and felt something crack open inside him. Something he had been holding shut for a long time. Brooke glanced at him just for a second, and he saw the question there, the same one she had asked at the farm. But this time, he didn't look away. On the drive home, Sophie asked why Noah didn't like Officer Brooke. The question came out of nowhere, casual and direct. The way kids asked things they didn't know were dangerous. Noah asked, what made her think that? Sophie said it was the way he looked at her, like he was angry, but trying not to be. Noah told her he wasn't angry, that he just didn't know Brooke very well. Sophie said that was okay because Brooke seemed nice and maybe they could get to know her better. Noah didn't answer. He kept his eyes on the road and tried to ignore the weight of the plastic badge sitting on the seat between them. A small thing that felt like a threat. 2 weeks passed and Brooke became part of the landscape. She was at the diner when Noah stopped for coffee. She was driving past the farm when he was out in the fields. She was everywhere and Noah couldn't tell if it was coincidence or something else. He started avoiding town when he could, taking the long way home, skipping the farmer's market. But it didn't matter. Oakage was too small, and Brooke was too present. Then one evening, just after dark, Noah was out behind the barn replacing a section of fence that had rotted through. The work was slow, frustrating, the kind of thing that required patience he didn't have. He was halfway through when he saw headlights sweep across the field, slow and deliberate. A cruiser pulled up near the barn and Brooke stepped out, her flashlight in hand. She called out to him, asking if everything was all right. Noah told her it was, that he was just fixing the fence. Brooke walked closer, her boots crunching on the frozen ground. She said she had seen the light and wanted to make sure it wasn't anything suspicious given the thefts. Noah said he appreciated the concern. But he was fine. Brooke nodded, but she didn't leave. She stood there, her flashlight aimed at the ground, and the silence stretched between them like a physical thing. Then Brooke spoke, her Voice quieter than before. She said she owed him an explanation. Noah told her. She didn't know him anything. Brooke said that wasn't true, that she had left. Without saying why, and that had been wrong. Noah felt the anger rise in his chest. Sharp and sudden. He told her it had been 10 years, that whatever she had to say didn't matter anymore. Brooke looked at him, her face pale in the dim light. She said it mattered to her. Then she said something that made Noah's hand stop moving. She said she had been pregnant when she left. The words hung in the air, cold and impossible. Noah stared at her, trying to make sense of what she had just said. Brooke kept talking, her voice steady but strained. She said she had found out a week after he proposed over the phone that she had been terrified, that she didn't know what to do. And then, before she could tell him, she had lost the baby. Noah felt the ground shift beneath him. He asked why she hadn't told him. Brooke said she didn't know how, that she had been 21 and scared and convinced she wasn't ready to be anyone's wife or mother. She said losing the baby had felt like proof that she wasn't meant for that life, that she would only fail him if she stayed. So, she had left instead, and she had spent the last 10 years